In this video, we're going to be doing a deep dive into the Daikin Heat Pump lineup. We're going to be going from their single stage options all the way up to their variable speed inverter options. We're going to talk about their flagship product, VRV Life, and we're also going to talk about some of the heat pump tax credits that are available currently in the market. Right now, there's a lot of heat pump tax credits that are available, and it varies by region. So if you're tuning into this channel for the first time and you're not familiar with what those tax credits are, we're going to go through that in this channel and more. But before we get started, if you haven't done so already, please make sure you smash that like button for the algorithm and consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. It takes a lot of time and energy to put out content like this, and liking the video and subscribing to the channel is a free way to show support if you find this content helpful. So that being said, let's dive in. Now, what I have pulled up on my screen is basically, this is from Daikin's website, and it has a list of kind of all the products that are out there. And there's actually more products here than I'm actually going to go through because some of these products are actually SEER 1 products, so they're not going to be around much longer because all the SEER 2 products are being phased in. And so if you look at some of these, just to kind of give you a quick rundown, we'll start all the way with the base model or the base model systems like the DZ4SE and the DZ4SQ. These are their single stage systems. This is a basic 14 SEER 2 system. And as you can see on their website, the difference between the systems that are going to be replaced by these new SEER 2 systems, like the DZ14SA, because it says SEER level, not SEER 2 level, you know that that system is a system that's essentially being replaced by this DZ4SQ. So if you are in the market currently and you happen to be buying a DZ14SA, it's almost identical to the DZ4SQ or SE. I think they're literally the exact same systems. They're just being phased out and replaced by the new 14 SEER 2 equivalent that's rated on the SEER 2 rating scale, which is a little bit different. And if you're not sure what that means, basically SEER 1 and SEER 2, there was a few minor changes that occurred, but the biggest one was that SEER 1, when it came down to how systems were rated from an efficiency standpoint, the biggest change that they made in SEER 2 was that they accounted for field conditions we actually see when we're in the field versus like perfect lab conditions when testing a system's efficiency. And what that means is that in SEER 2 systems, they're based on a 0.5 inch water column external static pressure, which is a more relevant number compared to SEER 1, which SEER 1 was based on 0.1 inches of water column total external static pressure, which all that means in layman's terms, because I know that probably sounds like gibberish to you unless you're in the HVAC trade, is that it's a measure of how resistive your ductwork is or how good the airflow is in your ductwork. Because if you have a higher number, it's actually bad because that means your ductwork is kind of restrictive and you basically have a higher velocity. So if you have really noisy ductwork in your house, oftentimes that will mean you have a higher static pressure. It could also mean that the insulation, there's certain things you can do like insulating the return air filter box and certain things to kind of dampen the sound. Besides that, because sometimes it's just poor duct design that creates a noisy system, but oftentimes a higher static pressure is going to make for a noisier system and also a less efficient system. And so the reason that's relevant in SEER 2 ratings is that it's a more accurate efficiency rating because it's based on what your actual ductwork is, not what the ductwork is in a perfect laboratory condition where they're testing the equipment to see how efficient it is. So that's just a little, nerdy fact about what that even means. But basically, the difference between these two systems, the 4SE and the 4SQ, is warranty. So the SQ is the builder's grade model. The SE, these are both single stage systems, which if you're not familiar with that term, all that means is the system is either on or it's off. So it's a traditional system where when your, thermostat calls for cooling, this system turns on and it runs for an extended period of time. And then when it satisfies temperature, it shuts off and that's it. And the DZ4SQ, being a builder's grade model, does not have a compressor replacement guarantee, meaning that system, the compressor is still under warranty for 12 years, which if you go in here and you click on this and see, what the warranty is, it'll tell you 12-year parts limited warranty. The difference on the SE is that the SE comes with a 6-year unit replacement guarantee, which means that if the compressor fails in the first, you can see here it says 6-year unit replacement guarantee. That means that they'll actually give you a brand new unit, not just a replacement compressor. So that's one of the benefits of going with this system. If someone's looking for the absolute cheapest system, sometimes we'll put in the DZ4SQ because it will save them a few bucks, but it's normally minor to get that little bit better warranty. So most of the time, if someone wants a base model system, the DZ4SE is kind of the way to go. Now, a step up from that is this DZ5. The difference between these two systems is nothing more than efficiency. So if you look at the SEER 2 rating, it jumps up to 15.2. This system is going to be a little bit quieter than some of the base models because it does have have a sound blanket on the compressor, up to SEER 15.2 SEER 2, up to 7.8 HSPF2. And the biggest difference that you'll see is when you go to the Energy Star website, you can see that this is one of the systems that qualifies for that Energy Star tax credit. This is a tax credit eligible system. So this is the base model that starts to qualify for the tax credit. Now, if you're not familiar with the heat pump tax credit, the way that heat pump tax credit works, you can claim 30% of project cost. Maximum amount of the credit is up to $2,000. So if you buy a $5,000 on your taxes, you could get a $2,000 credit if you spent somewhere around $6,500 or $7,000 on a heat pump installation. You can use that towards installation costs, can be equipment costs, or a combination of both. So it's not just one of those things, but I'll make sure to link this in the description for you so you have access to this website and you can review this information if you want it. But the bottom line is you can see here there's a difference between the northern states and the southern states in that these northern blue states like Utah, Colorado, the blue symbolizes, that these are colder states, obviously. And so the heat pump requirements in these states vary. And I'll talk about that in a second because that DZ5 that I just showed you right here, although it is tax credit eligible, it is not tax credit eligible in the northern states. So it won't qualify for a tax credit in Colorado or Utah or any of these blue states. However, if you're in Arizona, if you're in California, Texas, Florida, any of these southern states, it actually does qualify for a tax credit in those states. So that might be a good option for you if you're just looking for a little bit more efficiency and you want to take advantage of that tax credit, because to be quite frank, the difference between the two systems is probably about that in terms of the cost. And so it would make sense to upgrade from that single stage DZ4 to this DZ5 SE to get a little bit better system that's a little bit more efficient and also qualifies for that tax credit. Now, the HSPF2 rating is 7.8. That stands for Heating Seasonal Performance Factor, and SEER just stands for Seasonal Energy Efficiency Ratio. There's another rating called EER, which is Energy Efficiency Ratio, and we'll talk on that on a little bit when we talk about the Daikin Fit Enhanced, which is the next line up from this, because it's relevant for some of the rebate purposes. And if you're also interested in learning a little bit more about these efficiency ratings and what they mean, I'll make sure to link a video at the end that we made specifically about heat pump efficiency ratings, what they mean, and kind of demystifies the whole process of that. But the bottom line is this DZ5 SE is kind of the start of those heat pumps that qualify for that tax credit. Now, if you look at the rest of these systems, you can see, again, this DZ16SA or the 16TC, these are both SEER 1 products, so those are being phased out and phased in and replaced by, the products I'm reviewing. Same thing for this DZ18BC and DZ18TC. And if you look at the next level up, it's basically the DZ7TC. Now, this system also qualifies for that tax credit, as you can see. This is not a cold climate eligible model. So again, this is only going to be in these orange, southern states. And the DZ7TC, the big difference is that this is a 2-stage heat pump. It's also going to have a sound blanket, so it's going to be a little bit quieter. Quite frankly, if you're considering this particular system, you'd be better off going with a Daikin Fit, in my opinion. The reason is that the Daikin Fit is going to be, number one, an inverter. Two, it's about the same price, most likely, depending on prices vary widely based on your region and based on the contractor that's installing them. And the reason for that is just because cost of living varies by region, and then a particular company's overhead can vary drastically, and so that's why prices are going to vary. So when you're getting a few bids, you'll be able to compare these and find out where the prices are coming in. But the bottom line is that 9 times out of 10, we rarely sell this system, this 2-stage system, because the price point for us to offer a Daikin Fit, they're basically neck and neck, and so it's not much of a jump to go to an inverter from this system. But you do get a little bit better warranty on the compressor, and that you do get a 12-year unit guarantee. So if the compressor goes out in the first 12 years, you get a brand new unit, not just a brand new compressor, so that's nice. And when you look at the efficiency ratings on this, you can see the efficiency does jump up quite a bit. It's up to 17.2 SEER 2. Now, the reason these ratings all say up to or something along those lines is that the actual efficiency is going to vary based on the matchup and based on which system this is paired with. This talks about the systems that it's paired with right here. If you scroll down, it should, well, I'll show you another example where they have all the ones listed that it pairs with. But basically there's several different options in terms of you compare it with a two-stage air handler, you compare it with a variable speed air handler, you compare it with a variable speed furnace, a modulating furnace, a two-stage furnace. There's a lot of combinations that you can pair this system with in order to get an AHRI matchup, which will be required in order to qualify for that tax credit. And if you're curious, again, you don't have to look this up. You can come in here and look up, specific models. This is on the Energy Star website. Your contractor will know, what qualifies and what doesn't. I will say it is hard to keep track of because there's so many systems out there that, do qualify with one particular furnace, but they don't with another furnace or another air handler. So it does get confusing. But as you can see, I pulled up the DZ7TC and you can see right here, it's tax credit eligible for heat pumps in the South. And it says yes here, but it's not in any of the northern regions. And these are all individual matchups based on specific indoor unit numbers paired with specific furnaces. So depending on your specific, system that you're looking for, there will be a matchup if it does qualify for that. Now, this next model, the DZ6VS, you can see is the first and the only one in the product lineup that qualifies as a cold climate heat pump. Now, what we'll do is I'm going to go ahead and pull this up for you. Now, one interesting thing about the Daikin Fit is that it qualifies in the northern states because it qualifies for cold climate purposes, but it actually doesn't qualify for that tax credit in the southern states. So if you go down here and you look at the models that are available, we'll talk about the difference for the Daikin Fit and why, even if you are in a southern state, if I had to choose between the Daikin Fit or, the two-stage system, I would go ahead and go with the Daikin Fit. And the reason, just because it's going to be a quieter system, number one, you're going to be more comfortable, you're going to save money in the long run. And all those things add up to the point to where, this is going into your home. And at the end of the day, you want to be comfortable. And if this system, if maximizing comfort is more important to you, then I would go for a Daikin Fit or any inverter product because it's going to qualify, even though it's not going to qualify for a rebate in the southern states, as you can see here, but it will qualify for the tax credit in the northern states. The bottom line is you're going to be more comfortable with any of these inverter products. So if the price point is close on, and you're deciding between a Daikin Fit or a two-stage system like the DZ7TC that we just reviewed, in my opinion, I would lean towards the Daikin Fit just because you're going to get a much quieter system. It's going to actually be more efficient. And the reason that this system is more efficient, even though if you look at the SEER ratings, the SEER, it's not that much higher. It says up to 18. The HSPF does jump up a bit to 10. So that's the heating seasonal performance factor, remember. But the biggest benefit is this thing is a variable speed compressor. So what does that even mean? Well, a single stage and a two-stage system is what it sounds like. It's either on, 50% capacity and then ramps up to 100% capacity, but it basically only has one or two stages of heating and cooling. A variable speed system, however, can ramp up from 10% capacity up to 14, up to 27, up to whatever it wants. And the benefit of that is that that system is going to be more effective. Number one, it's more efficient that way because when it first comes on, it's coming on pulling a fraction of the power that it normally would. And that's where the system really maximizes efficiency, is that especially on those shoulder months when it's not like the middle of summer, your system might be running at 20% capacity for half the day, but your house is just going to feel a lot more comfortable because the air conditioner is circulating air more often. And so because you're getting more air circulation, you're going to find that with a lot of these inverter systems like the Daikin Fit, you're going to get a more even temperature distribution. And you can see the system, when it comes down to the reviews, the system's very highly rated, right? See, it says awesome, ducted system. I'm trying to find a bad review. Air conditioner works great so far, very efficient, quiet and efficient, new Daikin heat pump. So, people love it. Like, the reason we love the Daikin Fit so much is just because customer satisfaction. Normally there's got to be a bad review, but in here, runs quiet, but why doesn't the homeowner have access to the lockout temperature feature? I'm always just curious what there is. So there's installer settings. That's what they're talking about. Here's one that says time will tell, enjoying the features. It's interesting, but yeah, it's bottom line is it's a pretty good product. It's honestly, it's an excellent product. I love installing them because they are just, like I said, they're quiet. Customers are always happy with them. They're very efficient. And from a comfort standpoint, customers, when they're hiring us, are always expecting their new system to be more comfortable and quieter or just better in some way. And the Daikin Fit definitely delivers on being better in terms of those parameters, being quieter and being more efficient. The one thing I will say is the biggest complaint that we do get on the Daikin Fit, and this is true for any communicating systems or inverter systems, is that the Daikin Fit does not, you have to use a Daikin 1 thermostat, which some people complain about the Daikin 1 thermostat interface. I will say it is not the greatest interface, but I have two Daikin 1 thermostats. We have one for the office and we have one at home. I don't find it to be that big of a pain. Like, it doesn't bother me or drive me nuts. Otherwise, trust me, as the HVAC guy, I would change the thermostat or change the system. I don't mind using it. I don't find that I have a lot of chronic buggy issues with it. The newer system, there's a Daikin 1 Touch, is the most popular thermostat that we put in versus the traditional one. But depending on the system you're putting in, if you really have to have a Nest Ecobee or something like that, then I wouldn't go for the Daikin Fit, just because you're not going to be able to use that thermostat. You are going to have to use the proprietary Daikin 1 thermostat. Again, that's the only real complaint we get about these systems. Now, side discharge systems means the fan discharges out the side. So this is like what you see in a traditional mini split. These systems are always going to be the quietest inverters on the market just because of how they're designed. They're just very quiet. In quiet mode, this is as low as 43 decibels is what it says, compared to a single stage or a two-stage system like the other ones we just talked about. Those run anywhere between 68 and 75 decibels. And so it's just extremely quiet. And in terms of the compatible products you can see here, any of these communicating or variable speed furnaces qualify. Any of these communicating or variable speed air handlers qualify. And then the coil, if you're pairing this with a furnace, is going to be the CAPEA coil. This coil is evaporator coil that sits on top of the furnace. The difference between this and a traditional coil is that this inverter system, one of the benefits of it, and we'll talk about some of these benefits here, and I'm spending a little bit more time on this versus the other systems because there's actually a lot of more differences on the Daikin Fit versus these other systems. This system has what's called an electronic expansion valve, and I'll do a Google search really quick and see if I can pull one up, but basically what an electronic expansion valve does is that you normally inside your TXV or inside your air handler, but you have a device that meters the flow of refrigerant into your indoor coil. So that evaporator coil I just showed you, that's the indoor portion of your air conditioner. That sits on top of the furnace. And when the system is running, that thermostatic expansion valve, or TXV, was what's in a normal system, is opening and closing based on the temperature it senses on the suction line and the pressures, and it's basically releasing the right amount of refrigerant into your coil to operate more efficiently. The benefit of an electronic expansion valve, or an EXV, which is like this, is that it's like, think of it as like a digital valve versus an analog valve. And so this system is communicating with the outdoor unit. And so when the system kicks on, it sends a signal to the outdoor unit and the thermostat and the furnace, and it lets the electronic expansion valve to, hey, open this much, and then open this much, and then open a little bit more. And it gradually pinpoints the exact amount of refrigerant that should be flowing into the coil. And so everything's working in unison. So when that compressor first kicks on, it's just barely, pushing refrigerant into the coil. And that's how it maximizes that efficiency. But more than that, it's how it maximizes comfort, because an electronic expansion valve is going to give you a lot more comfortable system because it's just better at removing heat. The first 10 minutes when your system kicks on with a thermostatic expansion valve, or even just like a piston restrictor, it's taken a while for the system to find some level of equilibrium where it's actually being efficient at removing heat. Whereas with this system, right away, it's efficient at removing heat from your home. And so we just find, one of my employees, he has two Daikin Fits installed at his house, and literally he was, right after he installed it, he texted me a picture and he said, dude, check it out. And it was 61 degrees on his thermostat, and it was an actual 61 degrees in his house in that room. Now, granted, this was the first floor, so it's not the upstairs, but I mean, his upstairs, he could get it that cold if he wants, because his systems, granted, are sized in a way that to allow to keep his house ice cold. So no one keeps their house at 61. That was just him kind of bragging, like, dude, look what I did. And he modified his ductwork and made sure the system worked, was going to be able to handle that sort of capacity. But the bottom line is they are super efficient at heat removal and really are going to run as a very efficient system. So we really like these systems. That's the benefit of going with an inverter. The next system I'm going to talk about is the DZ9, and we'll talk about the difference between this and the Daikin Fit and why you should maybe consider upgrading to the DZ9, because it's not for everyone. Really, it's going to be if you're in one of those southern states, and I'll explain why. But that's kind of it for the Daikin Fit. I mean, it's a great system, best bang for your buck. We sell a lot of Daikin Fit systems because, again, customers are happy, and I like happy customers. And so anything we can do to keep that kind of, when we find a product we like and that customers like, we tend to stick with it for that reason. Now, the VRV Life Life is another product I'll talk about kind of briefly, and I'll talk about why you would go with this. Now, VRV Life, the only difference is that this is a variable refrigerant flow product. This particular system can communicate with up to 16 head units depending on the size. So basically, if you have, let's say, one condenser outside and then an indoor, in this particular example, you can see there's a furnace it's connected to with an evaporator coil, and then there's another, this is a slim ducted unit, which is like a concealed ducted unit that you could put in a tight attic or something, or maybe in a crawl space to serve a certain part of the home, or this is an air handler. The only real benefit of VRV, which is a big benefit, this is what the system we actually have at our house and at the office. VRV Life is basically, it allows you to hook up to multiple systems, and so you can have multiple head units as well as a ducted system as well as a furnace, all with one condenser outside, and so that is the biggest benefit. If you don't have any desire or ability to really zone your house or a need to zone your house, I wouldn't go with VRV, because that's really the biggest benefit. But if you're looking to maximize comfort and put in a high-end system, they are quiet, they're super efficient. They do not qualify for the tax credits because of their EER rating. So if you go in here, you'll see there's no tax credits. That being said, it might qualify for some local rebates depending on what you are looking for. But this system, it's super quiet, super efficient. It's like a Daikin Fit that has zoning capabilities. And so that's one of the benefits, or one of the reasons you would go with this, is that you're going to have a more comfortable home because you're going to be able to zone it. But if you have no need or desire to zone your home, you don't really need a VRV Life system. Now, that being said, right now we're going to talk about the DZ9, but before we do that, if you haven't done so already, please smash that like button for the algorithm. And again, consider subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. We put out daily and weekly content on how you can get the best HVAC for your home. And if you're enjoying this content so far, it is much appreciated. So again, diving in, here's the DZ9 VC. So talking about, the SEER differential, you can see on the DZ6, which was the Daikin Fit Enhanced, that system went up to 18 on the SEER 2 ratings. This goes up to 22.5 on the SEER rating, so 22.5 SEER 2. However, as you can see, the HSPF2 rating drops a little bit, so it's 8.2 on the SEER 2 rating. However, this is also a variable speed compressor, and so if you want to look at, what the big difference is, you can see that this system also qualifies for the tax credit. However, as we kind of talked about earlier, this system only qualifies in these southern states. So when I was talking about whether, if I was choosing a high-end system or one of the more top-of-the-line systems, I would be choosing either a Daikin Fit or I would be choosing the Daikin DZ9, right? The product we just looked at. And I was trying to decide, which one do I want? The way I would decide is, honestly, if you're living in a southern state, depending on what the ambient temperatures are in your area is really going to determine what is going to be best for you. Now, Daikin Fits do the Daikin Fit Enhanced, which is, I'll show you the actual product data in a second. And when I mean product data, I'm going to get kind of nerdy and do a deep dive into the numbers. I'm going to show you COP performance, which has to do with heating performance. And I'm also going to show you the high ambient performance. So if you live in a place like Phoenix, Arizona, or Las Vegas, Nevada, where it regularly gets above 110 or 115 degrees on the very hottest days, I'm going to show you which systems keep up best in those types of climates, because that would be, in a nutshell, just spoiler alert, a Daikin Fit is going to be better for, these northern states from a heating perspective, and the southern states, the DZ9 is going to be a little bit better from a cooling perspective, even though the Daikin Fit Enhanced can keep up in this environments. Now, that statement only applies if you live in a climate that regularly gets above 105 or 110 degrees Fahrenheit. So this is going to be like Palm Springs, Phoenix, Arizona. If you live in Dallas, Texas, or Houston, Texas, even though it's a very high humidity, it doesn't really get above 105 that often. And so the Daikin Fit's going to be fine and work great in that market and still be able to keep up. But in a colder climate, the difference between the DZ9 and the Daikin Fit is that this Daikin Fit will be able to keep up a little bit better, and I'll show you why. And the reason this is important is because, as you can see, this says Energy Star cold climate. The reason that this Daikin Fit qualifies as a cold climate heat pump is on this, let me pull up this chart here for you, but it has to do with what's called COP, and that stands for coefficient of performance. Now, looking at this chart here, we're not looking at these models because they don't end in E, and if they don't end in E, they're not actually the Daikin Fit Enhanced, and the enhanced models are the ones that qualify for the tax credits in the heating climates. Now, if we go down here, you can see, so this is the 2-ton system, and just to give you an idea or give you a head-to-head matchup so you can see what we're talking about, what this chart means, just to kind of demystify qualify it. This number at the top is the outdoor air temperature. So it goes all the way from negative 10 degrees Fahrenheit up to 65 degrees Fahrenheit. This MBH stands for BTUs. And so this 23 means 23,000 BTUs, which is about 2 tons of heating capacity. And scrolling down here, this COP stands for coefficient of performance. And so this number 3.3, what that means is that is the efficiency of this particular system. So what a COP means is it's the amount of electricity required to produce 1 watt of heat. And so a COP of 3.3 means that it takes 1 watt of electricity running that heat pump to produce 3.3 watts of heat energy, because a watt is also a measurement of heat, not just electricity. So when you can see this COP of 3.3 at 47 degrees Fahrenheit and the BTU output is 23,000 BTUs, if we scroll down here to see how the system performs at 5 degrees Fahrenheit, we can see that the capacity loss is such that it is producing 16,000 BTUs of heating capacity, and the efficiency drops as well. The COP is 2. Now, the reason these numbers are important is that in order for a system to qualify for this heat pump tax credit in these northern blue states that I just showed you on this chart, it has to have a COP of 1.75 at 5 degrees Fahrenheit, and it has to maintain at least 70% capacity of its 47 degrees temperature in order to do so. And so the system qualifies and meets those parameters, and that's why it qualifies as a cold climate heat pump. And if you look at the DZ9 and we scroll down to the same cold climate data or the heating performance data, we will show you that on the 2-ton system, right here, same thing, 23.2 thousand BTUs is the output. The COP, it's a little bit more efficient at 47 degrees Fahrenheit, so it has a COP of 3.5. But at 5 degrees Fahrenheit, the COP is still more efficient. It's 2.2. However, the capacity loss is such that it's 3,000 BTUs less than its Daikin Fit equivalent, which is pretty substantial on a smaller system like this. And so that's why the Daikin Fit qualifies those cold climates, but the DZ9 does not. So if we look at cooling performance data, just to scroll up right here, we'll look at the 5-ton system, and you can see the 5-ton is the most prominent in terms of showing capacity loss, and so that's why we'll use that one to show capacity loss in cooling mode. So if you look at this 4-ton system on the DZ9, you can see that this 4-ton system at 95 degrees Fahrenheit, right, it's running at about this number at the top here that says entering indoor wet bulb temperature. So what entering wet bulb temperature means is that's basically your indoor air temperature measured with a sling psychrometer. I'm not going to nerd out anymore on that, but it's your temperature of your indoor air, but it's wet bulb, not dry bulb. And so 67 degrees, so this is not going to be like the temperature you would see on your thermostat, right? So 71 degrees wet bulb is not like what you see on your thermostat. Your thermostat is taking a dry bulb temperature reading. So when it says 71 degrees for the indoor wet bulb temperature, you can see this thing is putting out 46,000 BTUs of cooling capacity, which is almost 4 tons. There's 12,000 BTUs per ton. And if you look at 115 degrees, this system still, this is the DZ9, this derates to where at a 71 degree wet bulb temp, it's putting out 42,000 or 41,600. We'll call it 42. So it's losing about 4,000 BTUs of capacity. However, if we go look at the Daikin Fit Enhanced, what we can see is that this system at 71 is putting out 45.3, and then it actually drops to 38.4. So that it's not a huge difference. That's why, this system is still, we sell the Daikin Fit Enhanced in markets like Phoenix, because the Daikin Fit Enhanced does actually keep up a little bit better. But you can see there is a difference in terms of high ambient performance. That's why this system, the Daikin Fit, qualifies in the north, but the DZ9 qualifies for those heat pump tax credits in the south, because it does a little bit better job of maintaining capacity and efficiency from a cooling perspective in those hotter summer months and summer days. And again, I know this is a lot to take in and this is a lot of information, but the bottom line is, we try to do a deep dive just because most people don't buy HVAC that often, unless you live in a house where you have like 4 or 5 systems, and you might be used to replacing your systems a little bit more often. But most people do this, once every 10 years or 20 years. And so the technology changes a lot over those times. So we really like to go and do a deep dive on, what the biggest differences are and what the value is going to be jumping through each system, because it's hard to, demystify. It's not just like I'll go with a single stage because I just want the basic one, or, I'm going to go with the inverter because I want something that's quieter. There's really a lot more that goes into it, so we try to give people a lot more information so that you can make an informed decision. And if you happen to be in the market for HVAC system replacement, or if you just recently moved and you need a permanent HVAC company to take care of your regular maintenance and service, click the link in the description below to be connected with a local contractor in your area. We've actually teamed up with a handpicked group of contractors nationwide that maintain the highest customer service ratings on Google, as well as technical excellence. So if you've watched this show and you thought, wow, I'd really like to work with these guys, but it's too bad that they only service a few select areas, I feel you, and that's why we've decided to partner with the best local contractors nationwide in your area, some of which have even been featured on our show. This way, you can find a contractor that's familiar with the latest technology, whether that's cold weather heat pumps or inverter-driven heat pumps that work well on battery backup or solar or in-floor radiant heat or any other technology that's specific to your climate or your region. We're partnering with those contractors, so click the link in the description to request an appointment with us or with a vetted HVAC Dope Show contractor in your area. That being said, we hope you found this content helpful, and if you haven't done so already, again, please consider subscribing to the channel. It's a free way that you can show support. And as mentioned earlier, there's a few videos popping up on the screen. Some talk about heat pump efficiency ratings, as well as a few other videos that YouTube thinks you should watch. So make sure you check those out if you haven't done so already, and we will catch you on the next episode.